Understanding dyslexia opens the doors to potential. Okay? Transforming challenges into strengths with the right support and early intervention. Make sure you do it the earliest as possible. As soon as you see the red flags, it doesn't matter. Just go through the process. Do it. If they're not dyslexic, perfect. But if they are, you can start working with them. So don't wait until the last minute to help them out.
You are listening to the Daily Talks podcast where my mom, Dali, empowers parents like you with parenting tips. My mom's mission is to help parents make their child raising experience easier and more enjoyable by sharing valuable lessons to save them unnecessary struggles. The Daily Talks podcast is for any person already parenting or planning on parenting a child. Each week you'll hear different experts talk with my mom about important aspects of parenting, self-care, and of course our specialized area of bullying awareness and prevention. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, go ahead and do so now wherever you may be listening. And don't forget to set up your alerts so that you don't miss any episodes. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast, Gigi. Thank you so much for making time to come and share about your experience. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Daddy, for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor. Well, to be honest, I found out that I was dyslexic when I was older, later in life, let's put it that way. And all my life I struggled with different, with reading, with math, but I didn't know what was going on. I always thought that I was not smart. And but it didn't stop me. You know, I always continue going to school and doing my best so I could pass the grade. And the other thing that helped me was that my mom was very supportive of me. So she told me one time, don't worry, I am going to do everything that I can possibly do to help you out. So she did, you know, but it was a struggle. And then one of my dreams was to have a business of my own. And it came to fruition. But when I was looking for the business, I knew that I didn't want to start something from scratch. I wanted something that would give me a roadmap. And so I bought a franchise, and it's called Dyslexia Institutes of America. So I was searching for a business, and then they were at the bottom of the list. And so I liked what I read about them, and I said, well, I'm going to contact them and see what's going on. And see if they accept me because my background is different. And so I talked to them and they told me, yes, you're a good candidate. Obviously, after several phone calls, right? It wasn't immediate. But they told me, yes, you're a good candidate. The only thing you need to do, you can run the business, and then you need to surround yourself with the psychologists, the diagnosticians, the therapist, so you can make the business prosperous. And I said, sure, we can do this. So finally, we got it open, and I wanted to have a relationship with the children. I just didn't want them to see me like the lady in that office. I wanted them to know my name, and I wanted to have that connection with them. So there are some exercises that we have to do on the computer. So but we need to keep scores. So I would sit down with them so I could get to know them, and I would keep up with the scores. And when I was there with them, I started observing them, and I'm like, yeah, I do that, or I used to struggle with that. So I started wondering, what's wrong with me? I mean, am I dyslexic? And it never crossed my mind because I'm a baby boomer. So dyslexia was not even mentioned in school, you know? So I had no clue. So I was like, am I or am I not? So I struggled with it for a while, and I would put it off. And then finally I said, no, I need to get evaluated. I was trained, when I bought the franchise, I was trained to do the evaluation. So I knew that I could not have anybody from the office go through the evaluation with them because I knew the answers. I knew what they were looking for. So I had to find someone from out of the office. So I did, but it took me like 2.5 years, to go through the process. I didn't do it immediately. I was just, yes, no. But finally I said, no, I need to know. So I went through the process. I found someone, and sure enough, they diagnosed me with dyslexia. And I was like, you have no idea how how I felt. It was just like such a relief just to know that I was dyslexic, and it wasn't because I was not smart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can kind of understand that. I think it was something that I was carrying with me. I guess my self-esteem was suffering because I always struggled so much, and I thought I was not smart, period. So when they told me that, it was like just like, oh my goodness, thank you. I'm dyslexic. It was like a time to celebrate. And
Right.
so that's basically my story. I had an institute. I closed the institute for personal reasons, health reasons more than anything. But when I was there, the moms would come and talk to me, and they would tell me about how they were feeling. Sometimes they would cry and they would open up. And again, they would think the first thing everybody thinks is my child is not smart enough. So, they're not intelligent. So that was the main concern for them. And also that they were not trying hard enough, that they were lazy. So I would talk to them, and I just tried to educate them. And I said, you know what? Your child is smart. In order to be dyslexic, they have to be smart. So that gave me the idea that I needed to start a program where I would help the moms. So that's where the Dyslexia Warriors, Moms Igniting Potential, that's where it was birthed. And so now that's what I do. I work with moms that have children with dyslexia, and I just help them. I educate them about dyslexia, and I also give them tips and tools so they can help their children at home.
Oh, that is so important. You said something that I hear a lot of people who get different type of diagnoses say, and they're like, "Oh, thank goodness! Like un alivio tan grande." That
Sí,
this huge relief
sí,
because you're told that you're not smart or you just don't get it or whatever, and then you just realize, oh, I'm just wired differently.
differently. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's a big misconception that people who have these type of diagnoses, it's not that they're not smart, it's just that their brain is just, it functions very differently than most people. And having discovered that as an adult too, my gosh, that must have been quite something, because I think a lot of kids go through part of their childhood thinking that, but you've went through that your entire childhood and a lot of your adult life.
Right, exactly. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. But like I told you, my mom was very supportive, and my family too. They never made fun of me,
Mm-hmm.
and not even my friends. But I remember when the teacher, it was time to read, and the teacher, was choosing certain students to read. You should have seen me. My legs would tremble, my heart would start racing, and I was just praying that I would disappear. And
Mm-hmm.
please, Lord, don't let her choose me, because I didn't want to read, because I was afraid, because I knew I was not going to do a good job when I
Okay.
was asked to
Yeah.
read. So I have those experiences that um, are not fun, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you're a child and you have to go through that.
Right.
It's really nerve wracking,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's where my passion starts. Because I want to educate the moms, because I know how the child feels. I went through that. So when I talk to them, I want to for them to relate to me, because I tell them exactly how they feel or how I was feeling at a certain instance, and the emotions that you go through, the thoughts that you get, how you fight those.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my passion. It has
Yeah.
become my passion.
And I love that, because I think you're the first person that I know that works directly with the parents. Most people that I know in this field work with the children, which is of course very important.
Mhm.
But I think the parents need the education just as much, because it can be very scary for them. It's also very scary even if they understand what's going on, but La Familia doesn't, because family can be brutal sometimes, and sometimes they mean well, but they can really hurt your feelings, and also contribute to the erosion of confidence in that child and in that parent. The
Correct.
other thing that I love is that, because we discuss this behind the scenes, is that you provide this information in English and Spanish, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
Este, Una de las cosas que son muy importantes, y les digo a los papás cuando se confirma que los hijos son disléxicos, que no comparen a los hijos, porque sometimes tienen hijos más chiquitos
Ujú,
y a veces le dicen al niño, mira, no puedes escribir esta palabra cuando tu hermano que apenas tiene 6 años, 7 años, ya la puede escribir o algo. Les digo, no están comparando manzana con manzana.
ujú,
It's totally different. So make sure that you just not educate the siblings, but also los tíos, las tías, los abuelitos, los primos. Nunca comparen a los niños porque
ujú,
no es lo mismo. Sí, físicamente y mentalmente es lo mismo, ¿verdad? Porque son inteligentes, son niños que pueden lograr lo que ellos quieran. La única diferencia es cómo procesan la información que se les da, que viene siendo el lenguaje.
ujú,
And this is how it works. And I try to give analogies and how they process the information. So I tell them, okay, think of a library. Okay? And well, first of all, the person that is not dyslexic, they are going to process the language on the left side of the brain. Y
ujú.
la persona que es disléxica va a procesar el lenguaje en el lado derecho del cerebro, el cual es el creativo. ¿Sí? Entonces, vamos a pensar que estamos en una biblioteca. Entonces, la maestra les dice a los niños, necesito que entren a la biblioteca y tomen el libro Black Beauty. ¿Okay? I need you to go into the library and look for Black Beauty, the book Black Beauty. So the child that is not dyslexic, he goes in, enters the room, everything is well organized, everything is in order. All he needs to do is go and find for the B, and then he looks for Black Beauty. Very simple, pulls out the book, no issues, right?
Right.
Well, the child that is dyslexic, even though they're very smart, they enter the library and their brain is very creative. So they enter the library, and when they go to the right side of the library, all the books are scattered. And there's piles of book in one corner and then in the other. So they're just trying to find this book, but they can't because everything's a mess, right? So, and not only that, but on top of that, sometimes they get distracted very easily. So they're looking through the piles, and then they find this book. Let's say 100 ways to create a tree house. So they start getting distracted with that, and then they're like, "Oh no, wait! I'm looking for Black Beauty." So then they keep looking, and then they found another book that they are interested in. And again, they get distracted and they're not doing what they're supposed to. And in the meantime, the teacher and the peers, they're just waiting for them. It's like, okay, when are you going to find it so we can get going? And finally, he does find it. But it's kind of late. They already wasted time. The teacher is frustrated. The peers are like tapping the floor, like, okay, what's going on? Maybe making fun of them. So that's the stress that they carry. And this is every day, 7 days a week. So just imagine you have to go through that 7 days a week, 24/7. It's a lot of pressure, especially when you're younger, 7 years of age, even 6,
Right.
that's a lot that they have to deal with.
So, what kind of signs as a parent should I be looking for to even consider a diagnosis?
Okay, in the United States, we can start testing as young as 5 years of age. Okay, the school districts sometimes they say let's wait until they're 8 or 9, second, third, fourth grade. That's when they want to test because they say if they're too young, they're immature and so on and so forth. But in reality, the sooner they get evaluated, the better it's going to be for the child. You're not wasting time. You see the problem, you start working to help the child immediately. So some of the signs, let's start with kinder, or even before they go to kinder, because they have speech problems. So if the mom notices that their 4-year-old is struggling to say simple words like mom, dad, teddy bear, instead of saying teddy bear, they say Tear Betty. Or they say, instead of saying milk, they just point to it. Those are signs, or they just can't form a word at all. Those are red flags that we need to pay attention to. Then they go into kinder. Cuando ya están en kinder, ellos deben, al terminar el kindergarten, ellos necesitan saber los nombres de las letras. Si cuando se gradúan de kinder no saben los nombres de las letras, esa es otra banderita roja que los papás tienen que poner atención. Cuando llegan a primer grado y terminan el primer grado, deben de saber los sonidos que las letras hacen, letter sounds, by the end of first grade. So those are the signs that we need to pay attention to. But I also need to note that just because you have some of the red flags, it doesn't mean that the child is going to be dyslexic. You just struggle with certain things. But the only way to confirm is by doing the evaluation. So if you see red flags as a parent, my advice is get the child evaluated as soon as possible. And if you approach the school and they tell you, no, your child is too young to go through the process, then take them to a psychologist or hire a diagnostician or a dyslexia specialist that can privately, do a test or an evaluation so they can get evaluated and you know exactly if they are or if they aren't. And if they are, you can take this test to the school and say, I got my child evaluated, and yes, he is dyslexic or she is dyslexic. I need for you to help.
Right.
Okay.
So when they go through the school psychologist is who administers the tests, right?
Exactly. The school psychologist or the diagnostician.
And that is usually free of cost because that's a state-funded thing that's provided to all students, right?
Exactly.
At public schools.
Public schools, they don't have to pay. But if you have to reach out to a psychologist that does not work for the school districts, then you're going to have to pay. And sometimes they take insurance.
Okay.
So the insurance might cover it. Okay. Not all of them do take it, but you just need to find the psychologist that does take insurance.
And do you happen to know the range of how it costs, how much it could cost if you don't have no insurance?
Well, it could be, it depends from state to state. And for example, here in Texas, it was from $750 all the way to $1,200.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it can get pretty pricey.
Yeah.
So yes, but no importa el dinero que se gaste por ayudar a sus hijos.
Yeah. Well, eso le iba a preguntar because some people might be like, okay, si tienes dislexia, ¿y qué? ¿Para qué quiero el test? So how's that going to help?
Bueno, como va a ayudar, una vez que pasan por el proceso de la evaluación, les va a dar un mapa. It's going to give them a roadmap. And what's going on with your child. It's going to tell you your strengths. There's the strengths and the deficiencies. It's also going to tell you how they like to learn. Are they visual learners, auditory learners? Also, some children, they learn by maybe first they have to write it, then say it, then spell it, then hear it. So they learn in different ways. So usually the evaluation is going to tell you all that, give you all that information. And once you see that roadmap, then what happens is that the schools can work on a specific program. And there's two programs that are available. It's the IEP or the Individualized Education Program or the 504 plan. And the difference between the two, the IEP, they work with specific instruction. They work with a specific program where they have certain goals that they need to meet. For example, they say reading, spelling, comprehension. This is what we need to accomplish in the first 3 months. So they have to stick to the plan. And if if the plan is not working, then they need to tweak it and make it work for the child. Y el plan 504, ese plan se enfoca más en las acomodaciones. ¿Qué tipo de ayuda le vamos a dar al niño o a la niña que es disléxico? Le vamos a dar más tiempo cuando esté haciendo las pruebas, le vamos a dar más breaks porque se cansa, el cerebro se cansa porque estamos usando el lado del cerebro que no procesa el lenguaje. Entonces, after a while, uno se queda, se empieza a cansar, el cerebro se empieza a cansar, entonces necesitamos más descansos entre las pruebas. Tal vez nos manden a un cuarto separado para que no haya distracciones, distraction free, free of noise, so you can concentrate much better. Maybe they can send a person that can take notes for you. I mean, there's all kinds of accommodations, maybe provide you with audiobooks. If you can't read, here's an audiobook. And most of the children that can't read, if they hear it, they're able to understand and capture the concept and be able to move forward.
Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I know I have actually met parents that don't really believe that a diagnosis is going to actually help. And I think that they also don't understand that when they get a diagnosis, these accommodations are something that is paid for them. That way the parents don't have to come out of pocket. Yeah. And go ahead.
Okay, un consejo que les doy a los papás. Ustedes son las mejores personas que pueden abogar por sus hijos. You're the best advocate for your child. So even if you approach the school because you saw some of the red signs at home, you're gonna go and insist. It doesn't matter if you go 5, 10 times. It doesn't matter. You keep insisting until your child gets evaluated. If you want to go that route. But if you have the means to go and pay a psychologist privately, go and do it. I mean, your child, remember, you're working for your child's future. You want them to excel. You want them to be able to accomplish what they need to accomplish. If they want to be a lawyer, they can be a lawyer. If they want to be a doctor, they can be a doctor. Obviously, they just need to work harder. Van a tener que trabajar un poco más porque procesamos la información más lentamente, pero podemos lograr lo que nos propongamos. Entonces, es muy importante que los papás insistan hasta que sus hijos sean evaluados.
Sí, muchísimas gracias por poner énfasis en eso because I think that because of the lack of knowledge, that's why a lot of parents don't see how important it is. But that's something that you're providing, which makes me very, very happy. And you said something that I preach all the time. I always tell the parents, you have way more power than the teachers, the principal, the recess monitor. Like they can all suggest solutions, but then when a parent does it, they listen because they have to listen. That's their job. And I just want to share a quick story with my experience with doing something similar. One of my kids had a lisp for a very long time. And I got a little worried because she started, I think it was Head Start, and she still had it. And then she started kindergarten and the lisp was still there. And it was cute and all. But I was like, oh my gosh, is this a problem? So I remember at first in Head Start, they said, don't worry about it. She's going to grow out of it. Then she started kindergarten. And I think at kindergarten, they did test her. And the speech pathologist was like, it's okay. She's fine, normal. She's going to grow out of it. And then first grade came along and she still kind of had it. And I was like, oh, maybe we should test her again. And they didn't want to. And I pushed for it anyway. And again, they said, no, she's fine. And she did. She just grew right out of it. But it was just peace of mind for me. And it was also a free resource. So I figured, why not? Because in case there's something going on, I'd like to just catch it now and see how I can help her, like just desarrollar whatever, to improve it. And that's what makes me sad sometimes when I see some kids that could have gotten help a lot younger because knowing like what you said, like how they learn, if is it auditory or visual, then you focus on that method so that they don't fall behind and then think there's something wrong with them. Yeah.
You need to make it easy on them. If they're visual, well, that's the way you're going to teach them, because that's how they're going to start grasping all the information, and they're not going to get bored, because sometimes if it's challenging, some of them, they just give up. You know, not too long ago, I was talking to this mom, and she told me her daughter is in middle school, and she was telling me she doesn't want to read. And so now I'm homeschooling her, and she tells me, I'm not going to be wasting my time. And I told her, well, you really need to sit down and talk to your daughter, because, you know, she needs, reading is essential.
Yes.
Spelling is essential. Math is essential in order for us to have, you know, a career. I said, so eventually she's going to want to study something, but she's going to have to learn how to read, how to spell.
Yeah.
And that's going to be so much easier, because she's going to continue struggling all her life, and maybe she's not going to be able to accomplish her goals, you know, have a career, whatever she's dreaming of. So that's very important. So don't wait until the last minute, because the sooner you give them the help that they need, the better off they're going to be. Because we had clients that were in 5th grade, and I'm not kidding. They were reading at kindergarten level.
Wow.
So just imagine all those years that we needed to catch up. It takes a long time. It's not like, okay, let's snap the finger and they are going to learn how to read and spell. No. The older they get, se va a hacer más difícil para que ellos aprendan y se ajusten, porque ya pasó todo este tiempo y ellos mismos tratan de ajustar su forma de aprender y tienen sus métodos, y cuando uno les quiere enseñar diferentes tácticas, es difícil, porque ya ellos ya tomaron su decisión de que lo van a hacer como ellos lo quieren hacer. Entonces, lo más pronto que puedan es lo primordial. Tengo un ejercicio, no sé si lo quieras hacer. I have an exercise. And maybe this is going to trigger and allow the parents to understand how the child feels when they're struggling and when they're writing, okay? So, te voy a dar la definición de dislexia, okay? And I invite everybody to grab a piece of paper and grab a pen or a pencil, and I'm going to give you the definition of dyslexia. Dyslexia is the inability to, I'm sorry. A very important point. When you're writing it, if you're left-handed, go ahead and write it with your right. And if you're right-handed, write it with your left. So you're going to use your less dominant hand, okay? Don't use your...
Okay.
Yes, you're ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
Dyslexia is the inability to read and spell commensurate to your IQ. La dislexia es la incapacidad de leer y escribir acorde a tu intelectual, a tu IQ.
Capacidad intelectual.
Capacidad intelectual. A ver, ¿cómo van todas las mamás que están conectadas ahorita? Es difícil para ustedes. Vayan pensando cuando están escribiendo, ¿qué es lo que sienten? ¿Cómo se sienten?
Frustration, como quiero escribir bien, pero me sale todo chueco and it's just all crooked and like I'm writing with my left toes.
Sí, pues esto les da una idea de lo difícil que es para ellos, you know? Entonces, cuando están haciendo este ejercicio, piensen, mediten en lo que sienten y pónganse en los zapatos de sus hijos y véanse en ellos y entiendan lo difícil que es para ellos y lo que ellos tienen que enfrentar todos los días cuando van a la escuela y cuando están haciendo su tarea en casa.
That is frustrating. Y sentir eso all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Sí. Constantemente lo están sintiendo, y luego aparte, muchos de ellos pues empiezan sus amistades, empiezan a burlar de ellos. Mira cómo escribiste. Hay algunos niños que no pueden ni siquiera escribir su propio nombre.
Oh my gosh, you know what? Me recuerdo ahorita de otra cosa que descubrí, la primera vez que descubrí que era dislexia.
Mhm.
I was in Spanish class in high
Mhm.
school because my
Mhm.
mom wanted me to know proper Spanish.
Mhm.
Yo quería French, but and then Mr. Chavez, my teacher, made me
Mhm.
his assistant, so I
Mhm.
was grading papers, and there was this one kid who did his homework all the time, pero his writing was so bad, I could not understand anything.
Mhm.
So I remember having to give him zeros because what he had done, and I was like, I don't know if he's messing with the teacher or qué está pasando,
Mhm.
but finally, after a few weeks, I went to Mr. Chavez and I said, "Hey, Mr. Chavez, this one guy keeps submitting homework, pero no sé, not even I could kind of understand his name, pero everything was just chicken scratch." And he
Mhm.
said, "Oh, he said if you have been giving him zeros, give him 100 because he has dyslexia
Mhm.
and he's trying." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, okay, so that made a lot of sense.
They
And
do.
what you just said, the case, sometimes you can't even
Spell your
tell,
own.
yeah.
Mhm.
So back then still didn't know what dyslexia was. He just told me, oh, he's got dyslexia, just give him 100.
Mhm.
He always submits his homework, he participates in class, give him 100. I
Mhm.
was like, huh. Y me quedé, for a moment, I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. That's weird. But
Mhm.
I can imagine, and he was, gosh, I think that was my 10th grade.
Mhm.
So I cannot imagine getting to 10th grade y todavía no saber escribir muy bien because of that um,
Condition. The condition.
condition. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's something that you have to just work so hard at.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, I have written with my opposite, my less dominant
This
hand
one. Uh-huh.
just for fun.
Uh-huh.
So ahorita me salió better than it would probably have been because I have practiced in the past because
Practice
I
before.
learned what ambidextrous was and I was fascinated. So I wanted to be
Uh-huh.
ambidextrous. I mean, it still looks pretty awful. Pero
But you got to practice before, right? A
that's
while
right.
back.
That's right. Yeah, but I'm very glad that you're helping the parents because I think that the key to the success of children is the parent involvement, like what you said, and also a parent de que sabe preguntar, saber qué preguntar. So when parents are working with you, give me a little summary of what that looks like. Like, how do you start? Is it a program of so many weeks? How does your programming
Okay,
look?
this is how we do it. Well, we used to do it with the children. We would call them clients, not students
Right?
or patients. It was our clients. So the first step was to evaluate them. Okay, because sometimes the schools didn't want to evaluate the child, so they would come to us, but they already had an idea that their child could be dyslexic, right? They had the signs, and maybe the teacher would say, "You know what? I think your child is dyslexic, but don't say that I told you because I could lose my job or what have you." So they would come, and then the first step was to do the evaluation. Our battery was composed of 11 tests. Okay, so we had to administer 11 tests. And the very first test that we had to administer was an IQ test. La primera prueba que siempre administrábamos era la del IQ o del coeficiente intelectual. ¿Por qué? La razón es porque si un niño es disléxico, va a ser inteligente. Entonces nosotros teníamos que saber si el niño estaba de punto medio, en promedio,
Ujú.
hasta genios.
Sí.
Y si cuando hacíamos la prueba salía a punto medio or average, we would continue administer the rest of the test. But if the child was below average, there was no need for us to continue because we already knew the answer. He was not dyslexic because he was not smart. As simple as
Wow.
that. Okay.
Wow.
So that was the very first test we would administer, and then we would go into obviously the reading, the spelling, comprehension, memory, because they also have issues with short-term memory. Okay. It's very hard for them to remember. That's why when they're trying to do the sight words, and maybe they saw this word a million times, they still can't spell it out. Okay. So it's their memory. Also, there are some things that the little reversals that we look for, the also changing words. Like for example, instead of saying saw, they might say was. If instead of saying no, they say on. So those are some of the things that we look for when we're testing. Obviously, when they're reading, we're going to look for the rate, the accuracy, the fluency, and the comprehension. Cuando ellos están leyendo, les damos unas historias para que lean y vamos a estar poniendo atención y revisando si ellos pueden, qué tan rápido leen las palabras. Y cuando las lees, qué tan bien las están leyendo, si están correctas cuando las leen. Y obviamente tenemos que también tomar en cuenta la fluidez, si está fluyendo cuando están leyendo, y lo más importante, bueno, todo es importante, pero lo final sería la comprensión. Ellos están entendiendo lo que leen y esto es increíble, ¿ok? Yo no soy ese tipo de disléxico, pero hay este tipo, porque no todos los disléxicos somos iguales, ¿ok?
Ujú.
Unos tenemos problemas en ciertas áreas, otros en otras, y unos aprendemos de una manera, los otros aprenden de otra manera, entonces todos somos distintos. Pero esto era lo que me fascinaba ver. Cuando estaban leyendo, estaba su rate, it was so slow. And then accuracy was not there. Instead of saying home, they would say house, and then they would omit the word the, and they would change it for something else. And obviously the fluency didn't exist. So by the time we would get to the comprehension, guess what? They were able to answer all the questions correctly. And I was just like, how can they do that? I was thinking they're not going to be able to. They struggled so much. How can they? But yet they were able to answer all the answers correctly. And that amazed me, it just that gives you an idea how brilliant their brains are, and how much they can accomplish even if they're struggling. So, entonces esas eran unas las pruebas. También hacíamos pruebas con los números, veíamos si volteaban los números, si recordaban las secuencias, y entonces ese era el primer proceso. Una vez que nos tomaba 3 horas para terminar la prueba. So it would take 3 hours for us to complete the battery. Once we finished the battery, then we would need 10 working days, 2 full weeks, to prepare the report. Once the report was ready, then we would call the mom or the parents, and we would schedule an appointment so we could do the presentation. And we would go and review each of the tests, and we would tell them, okay, this is how they did on this particular test. This is what it's telling us. So by the end of the presentation, we would have a clear understanding of what was going on with their child. So based on that, parents had the option. They could enroll them in our program or just take the evaluation. And also we would include, we would confirm they were dyslexic, we would include the letter for special accommodations, okay? So they would take all that to the school, and then the school would take over and do what they needed to do. Either put them on the IEP program or the 504 program. But some of the parents, they would say, no, we want the school to do that, but we also want to get them extra help. So they would bring them to us, and we would create an individualized learning program for them. Based on the findings, we would create their own program. So every child that would be there, each one of them had their own specific program. And as far as the length of time, it could take us a year to 4 years, depending on the severity. Okay, of the dyslexia. It's problematic, mild, moderate, and severe. Those are the 4 levels. Okay, as far as the severity, those 4 levels. So depending on those 4 levels, we would be able to have a good idea on how long it was going to take us. But like I tell you, it's not a simple process. And that's why I say, as soon as you can get them tested, get them evaluated, because they're going to fall further behind. And if they can, catch up in a year, and if you wait longer, it's going to take them 4 years to get caught up.
Okay, so you said this is what you used to do.
This is what I
Yeah.
used to do.
Right.
Now I am focusing on the moms. So, because see, they have so much, so many challenges when they're reaching out to the schools. So I wanted to help the moms. So what I do with the moms, again, first is educate them about dyslexia, what it is and what isn't. And then also try to give them some tips and tools so they can come down and they can be more relaxed about the whole thing and be able to help their children at home. So once they're at home, I also give them some instruction on how they can do it at home.
Okay.
Okay.
So then you're providing the specific tools on how to overcome those challenges, which is
Yes.
also what the school does, but anything that you reinforce at home is, of course, is what truly like really helps kids. And that's, I always say this to parents. And I'm glad that you mentioned that that's what you do with the parents, because I know that a lot of parents might think, well, I'm just going to go with the school because it's cheaper. I don't have to spend any money out of pocket. And with you, of course, they would have to. But,
Yes, you would have to buy my
but,
computer.
but this is what I tell parents. If you know of somebody like Gigi providing this service, and you know that there are other parents at the school, you as the parent have the power to go to that school psychologist and the principal or your PTA or ELAC or whatever other parent committee and say, hey, I know Gigi. She's phenomenal with teaching parents about dyslexia and how to help their kids. How about we put some of the funds together and pay her to come and give us a few workshops and get them into the school or into your church or into your community center or wherever. Because too many times we go without these resources y se necesitan. And sometimes the ones at the schools are also not the best, not always. A veces they're just like giving you the bare minimum to check off the block and say, okay, the IEP dijo de que hagamos esto o el 504, done. But really like no ven a los niños mejorando, no improvement. And so this is when I tell the parents, like, look for other ways because you don't have to pay out of pocket. Maybe somebody, maybe your own job will sponsor that for the school, and then you'll be able to, partake in that for free.
Right.
So you got to think outside of the box. And if anything, of course, if you have the means, then by all means, vale la pena.
Sí, vale
Because
la pena.
child is going to se va a superar, this is what can hold them back. Because I remember, you have kids that have big dreams and then something happens and then the self-esteem goes down and then suddenly those dreams kind of disappear and then they just settle for the bare minimum. And that's really sad because every child has so much potential. And so when parents work with you, do they work with you for a minimum amount of weeks that you require, or
the program that I have is a 90-day program, and we go through the process in those 90 days. That's how I work with the parents. But you know what? Let me give you some statistics. I love statistics, and I'm just trying to educate your listeners and your viewers because it is very important. It is. I lived it. I know what they're going through. So more knowledge, more power to you. So 28% of the teachers know about dyslexia.
That's a small amount.
A very small amount. So when the child is struggling in the classroom, sometimes, especially with the boys, they think it's ADHD or ADD, because they're acting up, they're being rowdy, they're being the class clown, what have you. So right away, the teacher is going to say, test him for ADHD because, this is what he's doing. He's interrupting the class. So that's when they start, and then they find out that it's not just ADHD, it's dyslexia as well, because those two conditions, they go hand in hand, okay? And the little girls or the girls, they tend to be more quiet, they just keep to themselves, and the teacher might think they're listening, but their mind is somewhere else. They're not really listening, so they don't get in trouble. So they just continue going and from one year to another, and usually they get diagnosed when they're in high school, the girls.
Wow.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of that, what happens when they're in high school, the ones that did not get the help, they usually try to just stop going to school. They just
Mm-hmm.
drop out of school. And just think of this. They dropped out of school. They can't find a job because they don't know how to read, how to spell. Even if they want to be working for a restaurant and be a waiter,
Mm-hmm.
what happens? They need to take
Yeah.
the order. They
Mm-hmm.
need to know how to write.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so something as simple as that. So they struggle finding a job, and 50% of the inmates are dyslexic.
What?
50%
50% of inmates?
of the inmates are
Wow.
dyslexic.
That's a huge number.
Mm-hmm. But on the brighter side, if you go to NASA, 40% of the employees at NASA, they're dyslexic. Why? Because they're smart, they think out of the box, they're creative, and that's what they need, to take us to the moon, to take us to Mars, to take us, and then again, entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
38% of the entrepreneurs are dyslexic. 38%. So again, even if they don't have a degree in a certain area, maybe they can learn a trade and make it a business.
Right.
And they can be very profitable. We have like Steve Jobs. He didn't have a degree. He dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
But look at what he did. We also have Einstein. And we have Cher, Salma Hayek, Tom Cruise, Jay Leno, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So I can't stress this enough. I mean, your child has a future. Even if he's dyslexic or she's dyslexic, they have a future, but they need the support, not just from the school, but also from the parents. Because sometimes their self-esteem gets affected and they try to give up. But that's when the parents come in and they can encourage them and say, I'm here for you and we are going to do this together. And just encourage your child and be with them, be very supportive of them. And don't give up on them because the sky is the limit.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And also, just have a sense of collaboration with the school and with anybody who's trying to help your child, because I know that in some cultures, like in Latino culture, sometimes there's so much apprehension, como, ay, how dare you say de que mi hijo tiene o mi hija tiene esto. No, nosotros no venimos de familia así. We're fine. And it's like, no, that's not, you shouldn't take it that way.
No, es que a veces ven la dislexia como si fuera, no sé,
algo bien malo.
Sí, una enfermedad muy grave, algo que tuvieran que tener vergüenza, pero no tengan vergüenza de que sus hijos tengan dislexia o de decir que su hijo es disléxico. No les dé vergüenza, porque no tienen que tener vergüenza.
Es una indicación de, sí, exactamente, que son bien inteligentes. Eso es lo que necesitamos cambiar en la sociedad, cómo miramos estas condiciones, porque se han visto por muchos años tan negativas. Y gracias a ti de que estás haciendo este trabajo, ayudándole a tanta gente, especialmente me imagino a los niños de que son migrantes y vienen, están tratando de aprender inglés y tratando de aprender, everything else. And then that's just so much harder too. So, they deserve all of the help that they can get. Y el apoyo en la casa también.
El apoyo en la casa y en la escuela también. Sí, hay algunas maestras que son muy, pues no sé, sienten esa necesidad de ayudar a esos niños y hacen todo lo posible por ayudarlos. Pero hay otras maestras que no tienen ese conocimiento y piensan que el niño es flojo, que no está haciendo un esfuerzo, they're not trying hard enough, they're lazy, and they give up on the child. Don't give up on the children. Don't give up on the children. Give them the opportunity. Get them evaluated. You'll know if it's dyslexia or not, or if it's something, another condition,
Yeah.
but just help them because they're our future. They're going to be running this country,
Exactly.
eventually.
Yeah.
So we need to prepare them the best we can.
Right. Then they'll be making decisions about you when you're older.
Exactly.
About all of us. Yeah.
Así es que hay que empoderarlos para que tomen la mejor decisión
Right.
para nosotros.
I know. So Gigi, si la gente quiere comunicarse contigo y trabajar contigo, where can they reach you?
Okay, they can visit my website, dyslexiawarriors.com. They can also find me on Facebook. Okay, dyslexia, perdón, it's going to be my name, Griselda, Oaxaca. Okay, I know I'm Griselda Provencio. That's my maiden name.
Okay.
So Oaxaca is my married name. So it's Griselda. I'm sorry, facebook.com/Griselda.Oaxaca.7/. So that'll be the Facebook page. And also they can, on Instagram, they can find me on Instagram as well.
Okay, great. Is that the same handle?
Mhm.
What? El nombre? Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
I'll have that on the show notes aquí en la pantalla.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time and for all of the work that you're doing, because I know it's helping those who decide to reach out and get that help.
Yes.
Yeah, and any last words before we go?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity, because I'm very passionate about this and I really want to get the word out that these children need the help, need the support of the teachers and the parents and the siblings and the whole family, so they can meet their goals. Okay, they can make sure that their dreams come true, because we all have different dreams, right? So as far as the last thing for me to say is that understanding dyslexia opens the doors to potential. Okay? Transforming challenges into strengths with the right support and early intervention. Make sure you do it the earliest as possible. As soon as you see the red flags, it doesn't matter. Just go through the process, do it. If they're not dyslexic, perfect. But if they are, you can start working with them. So don't wait until the last minute to help them out.
All right. Thank you so much, Griselda. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. I appreciate yours. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.